And boom, according to that, I am live. Welcome. My name is Hiko Simon. This is Tokyo Tonight. It's good to see you again. It's 10:30 p.m. Japan Standard Time, as it always is when I do the show. Messed a little bit with the setup today. I hope it's okay. In fact, actually, I'm just realizing the focus is probably set to be a little bit far away. It's a little bit blurry up close. You know what, messing with this always screws things up. But there we go. It's a little bit sharper. Manual focus. Oh, it's quite sharp. Great to see you all. Great to see Shubus made it first in Panama. Hope you're enjoying that morning coffee there. It's, of course, evening here. Hope you're all having a good week and a good time of things. It is generally with the COVID situation here in Japan, we had a bit of a bump during the Hanami season and the start of April, as you sort of expect, where it went flat and it sort of went up a little bit, but it's now basically back to going down 20% every week, still about 5,000 cases per day. But, yeah, it's going down 20%, so still pretty good. So probably by that measure, and that's probably hopefully going to be around 3,500 to 4,000 cases a day next week, still, which would be the peak of the last few waves, but still doing pretty well. So, little things getting better. The weather's getting a little bit better, although, of course, this is Japan, so spring sucks. The weather is changeable. You have like winter cold type days to hot days. It'll settle into a rainy season soon where it will, basically in May it will just rain for like 4 weeks, and then that will end and it will become unbearably hot for 3 months. So yeah. At the moment I am, however, enjoying the occasional good day and I'll get out for a run. I've been enjoying taking the 360 camera out for those. You can see the little videos I shoot from that on Instagram, and I also post them on the 360 camera site. I think I might post a few of them. I've edited them. They're on my iPad here, so I might just post them up onto YouTube at some point if people are interested. They're just little music videos of me running around. Yeah, I do. For example, I enjoy shooting them because it makes me think of going to interesting places. Like I ran to Akihabara the other day, which is like at the very limit of how far I can run. But yeah, it was kind of cool. I've been to Ueno and, all sorts of places anyway. So, anyway, I've been having fun with that. Hope that you're all well. Let's see who's here in the chat. It's great to see people rolling in. Not a lot of topics tonight. I always say that, but even fewer than usual, actually. So, yeah, I don't mind definitely taking topics or doing what Andrea did. And she says my name like that. You can see it flashes up orange on the screen, and that is awesome. That allows me to do that. So, yeah, allows me to see her, which means if you want to just get my attention or ask me a question or ask me for a topic, you can totally do that. From the top, we've got Shubus. No need for trash cans in Panama, apparently. I asked, ¿Por qué? ¿Por qué Shubus? And he says because everyone uses plastic bags, which is really what is happening in Japan as well. At least in the sense that people use plastic bags to, wrap up their rubbish and carry it home. There's actually been, restrictions now. Most places you have to pay a little bit extra to get a plastic bag, but that's what you get it for pretty much. You try to have one in your bag at least just so that you can carry your own rubbish home. I assume that's what you mean. Or do you mean that actually they use plastic bags like instead of rubbish bins or trash cans? I see Andrea correcting there as well, or explaining that in Commonwealth English we say rubbish bins. Again, one side effect of being in Japan for so long and working with Americans perhaps, but also Japanese learn English, of course, with American English as standard. And in fairness, based on Hollywood and the American military and everything else, American English is the dominant main form of English in the world. So, I feel like it's kind of a waste of time trying to correct people to speak my type of English. So I must admit, although I don't even have, I don't have an American accent, but I certainly don't have much of a New Zealand accent anymore. I have to speak so people understand me. So, but yeah, I've given up the fight on spelling and words like trash cans. I didn't even think about the fact I wrote trash cans in the title, but yes, that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. Andrea, great to see you. 11:30 p.m. in Australia. Anzac Day tomorrow, which yes, the Australia, New Zealand, Army, I think Army Corps. I'm pretty sure it's Army Corps anyway, but yes, the World War One joint Australian-New Zealand units commemoration of the fact that they lost a lot of those. I always remember in New Zealand it comes right after Easter, but I'm totally out of sync with that. But I think it's a public holiday, right? So enjoy the public holiday, certainly. Who else we got in here? December Clouds, great to see you in England. You just have plastic bags at the station sometimes, so maybe that's what they do in Panama. Maybe They just have rubbish bags literally as the instead of trash cans, which I guess is kind of eco-friendly. I mean, yeah. The problem, well, I'll save it up. I'll get into the story behind this soon. But yes, indeed. We've got Quinn Rankid. Good to see you, Quinn Rankid. As always, great to have you here in the comments. We also have on the 25th, says Andrea. Yes, indeed. Ada Void, good morning, Arizona. Good to have you with us. Mind blown about something there, says Andrea, my boy. Yabba dabba doo. Indeed, Shivas, you watch the same TV that I did growing up. Eric Bailey. I'm glad that you've made it. I feel like we can start the show now. We've got Dan H., another person from which I now feel like we can proceed to start the show. Great to have you here as always. We've got one Johnson waving right back at you. Eric Bailey, I think I just said indeed. Continuing to scroll, we've got Devo Dentetsu. Great to see you. Kerberos Tenshi, or Cerberus Tenshi, but I like to say Kerberos Tenshi, the Latin pronunciation. Great to have you in here indeed. Didn't get your coffee ready yet. Go get your coffee. What? I started on time. It happens sometimes. I did change the setup, so I'm sure something's going to go wrong, although I have a USB extra webcam plugged in just in case this one dies again. So yeah, all sorts of stuff. Believe in yourself. Good to see you. When you say in the world, are you tempted to use a dramatic pause and deepen your voice? Are you asking me that? I hadn't thought of it, but now that you told me that, I feel like I should try it. Who knows? PB, that's a bit disturbing. I wouldn't call anyone a Simonite, but great to see everybody here. Dan H., an update. I read about the weak Japanese yen. Sony, Uniqlo, Hitachi, Toyota, and etc. all do their billings in USD, and estimated that 40% of company billings are going to be affected by this. Companies are going to be affected by this. When they do their billings in USD, just thinking about that. Also, does that mean that they are, well, it depends on whether they're receiving or paying. If they're receiving, it's great. Those dollars are worth a lot more at the moment. In fact, another topic I plan to talk about, I'm no expert on this at all, other than that I have a lot of USD savings, which I changed a big chunk of this week. So yeah, I'll talk about that soon. But I have trouble thinking it's going to go any higher, but that is super interesting. So yeah, and it really reflects the nature of the economy at the moment. I still don't really understand why these things suddenly spike like this, even in the current circumstances. But yes, indeed. Anyway, we've got, where's Aaron? Good question. Where is Aaron? I hope that Aaron's okay. We've got JMac217. Great to catch the show live. Great to catch you catching the show live. JMac217. Great to have you in here. When I start on the topics, Shubas gets the extra cuppa. So I feel like just to avoid you getting all shaky and jittery from drinking your coffee too fast, I should take my time. Don't jinx yourself. It's all going well. How's my butter stocks, by the way? Butter stocks are good at the moment. We still have an oversupply. I mean, again, you know, the state-controlled butter supply is being managed like a drunk driver. So, you know, swerving from one extreme to the next. But right now we are in oversupply, if anything. So, yes, indeed. December Clouds is in the world. A Jeremy Clarkson Top Gear reference. It does sound like the sort of thing that he would sort of do, doesn't it? And I do like the way that he speaks. Dan H., I am now convinced that you are part of Big Dairy. Did you watch that episode of Asian... Oh, God. What is it? The podcast thing that you recommended to me. That is awesome. The guy in Taiwan doing Fonterra, which I just listened to today. So, yes, Big Dairy. I tell you the truth. I am not a big part of Big Dairy. I am a part of Big Sheep. And I'm a little bit upset, actually, that Big Dairy really has... So remember, I left in 1999, and so if you watched... it's escaping me, that podcast on Fonterra today on the New Zealand Dairy Board, you would have heard how that got huge after 2000. And the result of it is that even in New Zealand, a lot of farms are converting to dairy, which is actually a lot more intensive than sheep farming. You know, sheep farming, you just... let them go up in the hills and look after themselves and be fluffy, and occasionally you take the wool, and occasionally you go get some meat. But dairy, you know, is like they really pump a lot of, you know, for example, Canterbury used to be all sheep farming, and when I went down there, you know, recently, and it was all converted to dairy farming, it means that all the rivers are more polluted. You know, the landscape looks different. It looks a lot greener. You can see all the fertilizers that they're using a lot more. Sheep, you know, they don't need heavily fertilized soil or anything like that. So I'm like, and I grew up eating lamb, like probably more than beef at times anyway. So at least when I was in New Zealand. So I am not part of Big Dairy. I'm actually, although I do like myself some butter, I do indeed. If you asked me, would I want to go out for a good beef steak or a good like a lamb spit roast, I would go for the lamb. So big lamb all the way with me. But yes, whose job is it to get rid of the Japanese insane dairy tariffs? Well, we will talk about that. But yeah, that's something New Zealand's been working away at for years with the TPP negotiations, and obviously not been successful in spite of how successful Fonterra has been at doing that, even with countries like China, for example. But yes, in the Asianometry, that's the one. PB, that's right, Fonterra. I listened to it today, and it was a good. I mean, they're all good episodes. I was surprised that he was covering a New Zealand example, but yeah, those are really, really good, and he produces them at such a. Everybody, I do recommend Asianometry. Some of the topics seem kind of dry. Like they'll talk about grinding sand for silicon wafer processing, and how a company you've never heard of became famous, and you'd think, wow, that sounds really dry and technical and really but they're all really well researched, and he's not a dynamic presenter per se, but it's interesting, it's well presented in industry. It's a fantastic. I do appreciate Dan H recommending Asianometry podcast. It's on YouTube. And I do enjoy listening to every episode. It's all interesting. Just happened to be New Zealand this week, but a lot of Taiwanese coverage, obviously, but a lot of other stuff as well, and super interesting. So yes, indeed, I did watch that PB. Good recommendations on here. This is the place to get those, I guess. Tokyo 503, great to see you. Speaking of podcasts, have I stopped broadcasting the show on Spotify? You noticed. I got lazy. It's late when I finished this, and I was going to sleep after, and I must admit nobody seemed to complain, so I've now missed 2 episodes. If you want me to keep putting it back on Spotify, I will, but nobody noticed, and it is a little bit of work to do, and Monday morning work tomorrow for me. So I will do it. I will do it if you want me to do it. But yeah, I was wondering, I was looking at each one of those things, and they basically had like 5 or 6 views on each one. I mean, again, I realize that you don't you build it up by being persistent and not caring when there are only 5 views on it. But yes, happy to do that. Tokyo 503. Do you want me to get it going again? It actually doesn't take that much time to put it up. It's just, like I say, it's around midnight when I finish this. So I will go back to doing it if you want. Kerberos Tenshi in New Zealand are being into sheep. This sounds wrong. No, it's like a national tradition. Don't worry about it. Papa Power, it's been a while. Hey, good to see you, Papa Power, indeed. We've also got Johnny, or Yoni, I should pronounce correctly, from Finland. Wow. Nice to have someone from Finland with us. That's actually super cool. Yoni from Finland. Nick, howdy folk, indeed. Great to see you. We've got Tikyo Sam. Indeed, your Tikyo Sam's latest Instagram is some freaky stuff. Well done, Sam. How can I stop being so unbelievably sexual and intelligent? Also, your Taihen sensual voice is what keeps us in the chat alive. Also, good to see you gain, bro. I don't understand the good to see you game, bro, but a game, bro. Well, whatever gets you going, as they say. We've got Odie Jr. joining. Boom, good morning to you, Odie Jr. We've got a lot of the gang, indeed. I hope Erin's okay. I'm sure she's having a big day, as you can sometimes have. But great to see everybody else in here, and I guess that signals that we are about to get into the topics. So Shubas, you can get that a little bit sooner than usual, but yeah, Shubas, you get that cup of mo. In fact, it's much better than a cup of mo. I think that's the World War II. I've got an image of that being the cheap, horrible American instant stuff from World War II. But yes, get your Panamanian coffee and let's get into the topics. Joe Smith, hello indeed. Oh, in fact, everybody, I should do the usual things. Say hello, please. I love it when people say hello. And better still, if you're not a regular, say hello and say where you're saying hello from, just because I get a kick out of it. It's crazy just sharing that we're all watching this from all over the world sometimes. I love that myself. Yeah, remember, say my name if you want to get my attention there, because I will look at the orange highlighted comments which are addressed to me in between the stories if you've got a comment or a question or something that you'd like me to talk about. Remember as well to click like, because that is the only reason that I do this. I just do it for the like. So remember to like if you like and enjoy this, if you like the fact I come back here every week. Skipped a week a few weeks ago, but apart from that, I'm pretty good on that sort of thing. So yeah, with all of that, unsubscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Again, I've definitely peaked on subscribers. I'm not really trying to boost the numbers, but again, if you haven't subscribed, it is a nice sign that my channel is still alive. So yeah, please do that. Straight into it, and actually, as Dan H pointed right away, in fact, I think it's getting close to 130 now, 20-year low at 129 level versus the US dollar. In terms of the range, that I mentioned this last week, but in terms of the range that the yen typically swings, the highest I'd seen in 20 years, or like basically since I came to Japan, was about 125. According to this, it actually got to like about 128 or 127 a few years ago. The highest that the yen got, the most dollar that you got for every yen was about 75 during the Hatoyama administration. And yeah, those swings can happen in a short period of time sometimes for various reasons. And, you know, I've had times where I've earned my salary in US dollars, in US bank accounts, and found that extremely disruptive. So, yeah. You know what? I've just realized if I do this as an audio podcast, I shouldn't do what I'm doing, which is breaking mid-sentence to react to a comment. But I did just see it and I can't help it. Tokyo 503, maybe if I just post the whole show instead of editing. It's not that much trouble editing, but you know what? Maybe that is quick and easy. I'll tell you what. I will do that. I will not edit. I will just drop the whole show in with all the chaos. You enjoy that. Anyway, second cuppa, back into it. So yeah, the yen basically has been all over the place. And I must admit, effectively when the yen went from 125 to like 75 and I was earning US dollars, that was like a really massive pay cut. And it was made worse by the fact that I was paying income based on income earned the previous year. So, you know, I was like paying tax at some points, like 80% tax. It was just crazy. So of course, you know, with all of that, I was just trying to survive on the savings that I had in yen and try to keep as much of the money in US dollars as much as possible, waiting for a better time to convert it. And I actually did. I you know, converted only the bare minimum that I needed to, and I kept nearly, you know, all my savings from the time I was working US company, US law firm, in bank accounts in US dollars, and I kept it there until now. I kept it there for nearly 10 years, earning almost nothing. It's a Japanese bank account. I know I'm an idiot for not doing something clever with the money, but in the end of the day, just being patient has made it clever. I basically, that's money I put in when the yen was worth less than 100. Like a lot of that money I put in, it was worth between 75 and 100 yen, and I converted a lot of it the other day. Not all of it, mind you. I'm still going to leave something, but to me, 129 is nuts, and I converted it at 128. I hear people saying that they think it's going to go to 150 or 130. But I also find the moment people start saying crazy stuff like that is when the bubble kind of pops on it. What 25 years here has told me is that the natural level of the yen to the dollar is about 108 to 112. Like that's the range it should be. And if it's less than that, then the yen is too expensive. And if it's more than that, the dollar is too expensive. For whatever reason, the dollar has just suddenly jumped in value in the last wee while. And I guess people in Europe, perhaps, again, they're not seeing Japan as a safe haven, and they are seeing America. Perhaps it's understandable. I have no idea what's causing the yen to be so cheap. I'm guessing part of it, I mean, I do wonder if the pandemic and the lockdown and the lack of access for, you know, hedge funds and people who work in investment funds to come to Japan is just making people think to pull their money out of Japan to use it elsewhere, to use it in America and more open countries. I really wonder if that's contributing. It seems like the war in Ukraine must have something to do with it, although I can't exactly figure out how that would cause, again, maybe, and honestly, this is how little I know about currency markets. I don't know if this is just the US dollar getting crazy strong, or the yen just getting crazy weak. But again, I don't really understand why the dollar would be getting so strong or the yen would be falling so much. I mean, the fundamentals haven't really changed all of that much to me. But there again, I mean, long term, the economic prospects of Japan, maybe I would have been smarter if I had left all my US dollars in USD, because long term, it's hard to see that the Japanese economy is going to get stronger, just given all the demographic problems and so on, that it's just going to get kind of gradually weaker and less influential over time. But that said, I continue to subscribe to the idea that that money, normally those US dollars should have been convertible at about 110. And if it's 129, well, that's a pretty good premium. So yeah, I converted it all. That's what I did. I do not think, I mean, again, it's not clear at the moment that the government has a plan for this, but I've seen speculation that they are going to make some big announcement, that they're going to try to do something to increase the value of the yen. I'm not sure what they can do. If they want to decrease the value of the yen, they can print more money and they can do all sorts of stuff. But increasing, I'm not sure. I think they can like sell US dollars and so on, which can influence things. If the government also shows that they are determined to get the yen back to 110, people hopefully will stop speculating. Well, maybe not hopefully, but they will stop speculating on it, and maybe that'll reset things. So we'll see. But we'll see. The government's going to announce some measures to counter this tomorrow. And if they're effective, this is going to go back down. If they're not effective, it could go all the way. Who knows? It could go to 150 like some people are saying. But yes. Into the further comments. To YY, great. Long time no see. Glad that you could make it. Yeah, I think... indeed. Well, yeah, it is. I'm glad that there are a couple of ladies of good taste in the chat, but it's generally a bit of a laddie show, and that is okay. And whatever floats your boat. But yeah, I don't really attempt to come across in that sort of a way. Dan H, did I see the new Teenage Engineering TX mixer and audio interface? It is so small and beautiful tech. All the Teenage Engineering stuff is awesome. In fact, I still want that little keyboard thing, but it's so expensive. I must admit, I haven't quite hit full midlife crisis yet, but if I lost the accountability of a of a Japanese wife, and I suddenly just decided to go spending a lot of money, yeah, a Tesla and some Teenage Engineering music equipment would probably be on the shopping list. If I could go do that without accountability. They are nice. I saw the announcement of the TX6, and honestly, while it seems very efficient, I also looked at it and thought, oh, another thing that you'd have to learn and spend a lot of time on. But of course, looks worth it. I mean, again, they make amazing stuff. Amazing and amazingly expensive, but amazing. So yes, indeed. Quint Rankid asks, could the yen be cheap? Could that have to do with the oil supply? Certainly it could. Certainly, it does seem like right now is a good time to have oil, given prices going up. Again, that would probably help the US dollar and not help the yen, given that they have to buy it. In fact, it's punishing Japan needing to buy overseas oil, which is another reason why I don't understand why Japan doesn't go crazy, one, with flipping on all the nuclear power plants. Again, I know the controversy, but yeah, if you get into the whole new renewables thing, you can go green or even use the nuclear power to create, use electrolysis to create fuel cell fuel from water. You can do that. You don't have to import oil. You can get combustible gas and fuel cell fuel totally domestically, and I don't know why Japan isn't doing more to rush towards that. Of course, another big deal with energy security. I mentioned last week how Japan might not have actually attacked Pearl Harbor if they had realized that they actually had territory in Sakhalin at the time that had more oil, 5 times more oil than Indonesia was in Sakhalin, which Japan had, but they hadn't discovered it. They wouldn't discover it for another 50 years after the war. And so now Japan is helping to develop those oil fields which are in Sakhalin, which used to be on the Japanese part of Sakhalin. But under all the pressure to abandon Russia under sanctions, they've now pulled out. And immediately the Chinese government is like, oh, we'll backfill the Japanese part of the investment in those oil fields, which again leaves Japan worried that, oh, well, we thought we were going to get the energy from that and that would help our energy security. And it looks like China's going to snap it up because, Japan needs to be in line on Russia sanctions. And again, all of this might be contributing to an idea that Japan is not a good place to have your money, but I do my personal hope is that this just spurs Japan to not hold on to climate change inducing energy sources, and to speed up the conversion of the economy. But that's just me. Andrea Morboy, night, all indeed. Have a good night there. Enjoy. Have a good day off for Anzac Day. I don't know that you necessarily have to enjoy Anzac Day itself, but yes. Quinn Rankid, could it have been that Japanese society in the 30s and 40s didn't encourage exploration? You mean of oil? That's clearly not the case. I'm not sure what you mean by that statement, Quinn Rankid. If you mean searching for oil in Sakhalin, well, given that they invaded all of Asia in order to get the oil that had already been discovered in Indonesia, I doubt that would be the thing. I mean, clearly it was a grab for resources that motivated that in the 30s and 40s. So I don't think it was a lack of any sort of motivation or encouragement. Maybe just lack of technology for it. I don't know. But it is interesting. And yeah, hydrogen is still expensive, but you can make it cheaply if you hook it up with nuclear power. You could use it as a way to store it and move it around, and it's all carbon free. So, like I say, there are options for Japan to get a lot more energy independence, and, they have all of those means turned off at the moment. So, yeah. Anyway, that is that story. I'm going to go to the next story, which is the New Zealand Prime Minister visited Japan this week, and yeah, it's funny. I tweeted about this so a little bit about my background. Again, when I was a kid, my dad was in the army, and the New Zealand Army. Nothing fancy, but we moved around a lot. We lived in Singapore and Australia, and basically moved house once every year or two. Basically, we'd bounce around different army camps and so on. For a time, when I was small, my dad was even in special forces and actually traveled on a diplomatic passport, which was kind of cool. And it meant that he always had friends who were very, very cool, like friends, for example, who moved on from New Zealand to the British SAS, and people who were, in intelligence and doing all sorts of fancy stuff. And you'd hear very cool things, and I'd quietly pay attention. And this fostered my interest, actually, in politics and the news. I was always interested in. There were foreign affairs people around when I was growing up. And I always thought, without joining the army or passing the SAS exam or anything like that, which would be impossible for a wuss like me, I always thought that that foreign affairs seemed like a good sort of equivalent way to keep doing the same sort of thing I grew up around. And so I was always interested in that. However, New Zealand is a very, very small country without very much money to have embassies with lots of staff all over the world. So basically, in most countries, embassy duties, if you're a New Zealand citizen in most countries, you rely on the British Embassy or the Australian Embassy to look after you. New Zealand only actually has embassies in a few countries that it puts particular focus on, including Japan being one of them. But also, again, because the country is relatively resource limited, we only have a very small number of diplomats, even per population. And basically, New Zealand has like a two-party system. I mean, it's changed a little bit, but it's basically a two-party system. And basically, the left-wing Labour Party always hires people who do politics and law, and the right-wing National Party always picks economists, law sort of people, or basically economists. When they do the selections for the new hires for the foreign ministry. However, the foreign ministry basically, at least at the time that I was in university, only hired about 3 people per year. It was basically, they would only hire if someone died or retired. They didn't have like a big intake. So it really meant you had to be like the top person in New Zealand in your field, and the government had to be the right government for the type of subjects that you were taking. And I was politics law. But at the time, the right-wing government was in power, and they basically, the year that I graduated, they were only taking economics graduates. So I consoled myself by telling myself that, New Zealand diplomats just are glorified kiwifruit salesmen anyway. I could do something far more interesting, traveling myself and working for a big company rather than schlocking New Zealand butter and kiwifruit. Not that it's not a noble and worthy pursuit, and the fact that people who can get into that are super smart. Like, again, countries like America and Australia that have large foreign services not only have more places to work, but per capita population, it's easier to get in. And in fact, the only time I've really ever thought seriously about taking up, my mother is an Australian citizen, and I even grew up in Australia, so The only time I thought seriously ever about becoming an Australian citizen was did I want to go for the Australian Foreign Affairs instead. I kind of I considered it. I didn't think about it that much. In the end of the day, I kind of made up my mind that I was just going to go to Japan myself, and I wouldn't sell kiwi fruit. However, so I did get a laugh when the New Zealand Prime Minister finally came to Japan the other day, and it was the whole thing was a kiwi fruit sales event. The Zespri, the New Zealand Apple and Kiwi Fruit Marketing Board, has a brand called Zespri, which is which is very popular. I mean, the whole story of kiwi fruit itself is kind of silly. I remember going to Argentina and, people saying, "Hey, are you a Kiwi?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm a Kiwi." And all the Brazilians are like, "What are you, some sort of a fruit?" And I'm like, "Well, not like that, but yeah, I'm New Zealand." I mean, you realize that they named the fruit after us. We didn't name ourselves after the fruit. But everywhere in the world, it's like a successful marketing campaign gone wrong. Kiwi fruit are not kiwi fruit. Kiwi fruit are Chinese gooseberries. And they were everywhere, and they were like considered to be kind of like nobody ate them up until the 1950s or 60s. They were given as fodder for animals to eat. People didn't eat them. And when New Zealand, faced, Britain joining the EC and losing all of its markets, and they had to figure out some smart ways to make money from agriculture, some people realized these Chinese gooseberries that they're actually quite healthy. Some of them don't taste too bad. We might be able to sell a few of them. But if we sell them and they catch on, the problem is everyone else already has them and anyone else can grow them. So we need to brand them in a way that if they are successful and they get popular, people will always realize that the New Zealand ones are the best ones. So they sold these Chinese gooseberries all over the world as kiwi fruit. The idea being that, of course, if we call it kiwi fruit, everyone's going to know that it's New Zealand is a kiwi. So they'll immediately associate it with New Zealand and good quality and buy all of our butter and apples and everything else. The problem is kiwi fruit became so successful that it became more famous than the country itself. And now Kiwis travel, and Americans and Europeans and South Americans are always confused as to why we named ourselves after the fruit, when in fact it was the other way around. It was unintended consequences. But that said, in Japan it is very, very successful. You do see them in every supermarket. I eat them all the time here. They are wonderful. So yeah, the New Zealand Prime Minister came out. There was a weird musical dance. By the way, the TV marketing campaign was incredibly successful. They have these great commercials and everything, and they are super popular in Japan. You do pay a premium for the Zespri kiwi fruit, and it's one of the few types of fruits which you can buy at the supermarket where the imported New Zealand fruit is actually better than the domestically grown fruit. I've tried some Japanese kiwi fruit and they suck. The New Zealand really is up to the standards. Japanese fruit, by and large, is better than anything you can import. And Japanese recognize this. That's why it does so well, and it's why New Zealand can charge such a premium off these little things. But so she went to this event. She did some calligraphy of kiwi, and not bad for someone who I assume doesn't know any Japanese or know how to write Japanese and was just doing that by sight. Not bad. They had a pretty weird dancing kiwi fruit to sort of traditional Japanese music kind of scene. And the press opportunities with the large kiwi fruit mascots. And again, it was good, but this was like when I was cynically consoling myself by saying, I didn't want to be a bloody kiwi fruit salesman anyway. Wow, that dystopian image came completely true at the press conference. She did that. For what it's worth, I was wondering what exactly is the New Zealand Prime Minister going to talk about. I was hoping, of course, she would talk about the CPTPP and literally butter imports and Fonterra and letting more dairy into Japan. I would have hoped that she was doing that, but it looks like they decided to pick the easy wins. They probably swapped notes on how great it is to isolate your country and ban all people from traveling in and out. They swapped some. They're going to set up a joint venture with Japan on geothermal power. If you're from New Zealand, you'll know that big parts of the North Island actually use geothermal power. The central North Island, Rotorua, have a lot of power plants, which we've had for decades. Just we have a lot of volcanic stuff around there, which we can do that. In Japan too. So Japan is looking at expanding on that as a form of renewable energy, which is cool. But it was kind of not very impactful. I mean, just that and the general, everybody's going to support Ukraine and all that sort of thing. So yeah. In terms of Ardern, what do I think of her? Politically, I would not have voted her in. I don't really agree with her politics, honestly, and I do find particularly the left in New Zealand is a bit guilty of just being a bit silly, feeling like they have to oppose free trade for the sake of it sometimes, and taking some kind of wrong positions on stuff. That said, I thought she handled the pandemic well initially. That said, it's been a bit authoritarian in New Zealand, like more so than in most countries, and it was successful. But of course, lately we've realised in New Zealand that they couldn't keep it going forever. Now, Omicron is running rampant there, so it was kind of a waste of time in a way, being so tough for so long. And I think Japan has taken a smarter approach than New Zealand, although New Zealand got a lot of credit for a long time. But yeah, that said, I mean, I think she's a good communicator, and she's got a lot of positive attention for the country. So, I'm not as anti her as I would have been when she got voted in, and I don't really see a good alternative. But there again, I can't vote anyway. That New Zealand doesn't let New Zealanders abroad vote, at least if we're away for 3 years or more. And I haven't been to New Zealand in 3 years. So, I can't vote anyway. But yeah, she's doing okay. Jacinda, I wish you brought me some butter, but there you go. Back into the comments. Boom, Quint Rankid. Yes, I know they went for resources that had already been discovered, but why did Japan go looking for new resources? Quint Rankid. No, what I was talking about was Japan had not discovered. It would take another 50, 60 years. It wasn't until the 1990s that they found oil in Sakhalin. And the whole idea is that if they had realized that they had oil there all along, they might not have been so desperate to, because of course it was the US oil sanctions. From the Japanese perspective, it was the US oil sanctions that caused Japan to attack America. Not in revenge for the sanctions, but out of desperation. Japan was trying to expand its empire into China, and actually they were heading into Siberia. There was a big debate as to whether Japan should go north or south, and the army was having sway and it was going north. It wouldn't have had anything to do with America, but it was relying on American oil for its military to expand into China. And when America decided to punish Japan for its war of aggression in China by cutting off oil, that put Japan in a position where, at least if it wanted to continue to hold China and Manchuria the way that it did, it needed to find another source of oil immediately. And the only source of oil that they could see was Indonesia. And to get to Indonesia, they'd have to get through the Philippines. And to get through the Philippines, they'd have to get through America. And that's why they had to sneak attack Pearl Harbor, was to get to Indonesia, which, again, they wouldn't have had to do if they had known that they already had more oil than they needed in Sakhalin. But they didn't know, and they wouldn't find out for decades. So, yeah, I just find that a funny twist of history. I mean, look, in the end of the day, Japan had no business messing around in China the way that it did. And it did horrible things in China. So maybe it's a good thing they didn't know that they had oil there. Who knows what they would have done with it. So, But yeah, history, funny thing. Lysander45, good evening from the Osaka area. Good to have you in the Osaka area. It's your birthday today. Couldn't do much because of all the rain, though. Well, happy birthday. Glad that you can make it in to join us. And hope in spite of the rain you had a happy birthday nonetheless. It was raining here in Tokyo too today. Dan H. New Zealand only have embassies where big dairy, sheep and honey wants them. Yes, Manuka, the other third leg. Yoshinoya recently became 123 years old. Would I recommend it as a cheap Japanese restaurant? Hell yes. Yoshinoya I like. I don't like Matsuya. There's a lot of cheap chains that are okay. I like Nakao. I like, actually, I think that Saizeriya is wonderful, as I've talked about many times. But actually, Yoshigyu, it's just simply a beef bowl. It's just boiled. Is it boiled? I think it's boiled beef, about strips and so on rice, with some onion and with some nice sauce. But when I was like surfing, or if you're like doing physical stuff, if you're running around and you're tired and you need some energy, just some meat and rice, it's great. It tastes great. It's affordable. Yeah, big fan of Yoshigyu. I've not been for years. There isn't one near where I live at the moment. But big fan of Yoshinoya, actually. So I would recommend it as a cheap Japanese restaurant. If you're in Japan on a budget and you're looking for some places where you can eat a pretty decent meal for 390 yen. I don't know if that's what the price still is, but that was what the standard bowl was. It's pretty good, and you can actually fill yourself up pretty well and get a good burst of energy from it. So yeah, Tudom, Kiwis. As a kid in California, you thought New Zealanders were named after the bird. We were named after the bird. That is correct. The bird is the sort of national symbol. It's on most of the coat of arms, and most of our sports teams take some variation Actually, we have two types of rugby in New Zealand: professional rugby, which is not as popular as amateur rugby, and the professional rugby actually got the Kiwis logo, like the Australians are called the Kangaroos, whereas the rugby teams, which are more popular, the regular rugby, the amateur rugby, which is now professional as well, it gets confusing, are the All Blacks, and they use the silver fern logo, and the Aussies use the Wallabies, which are like a little baby infant dwarf kangaroo and not quite as cool. But yeah, the Kiwis, we call ourselves Kiwis, and that sort of is after the national symbol. I remember seeing, I think there were some French people once who thought it was an insult, and they were calling me, "You Kiwi," and I'm like, yeah. Like calling me by my name. Yes, indeed. That is, we did call ourselves after the bird. Dan H. Also, Yoshinoya exec got fired after saying his goal was to get rural goals hooked on beef bowls like they were meth. I remember reading something about that and rolling my eyes. Seemed very specific, both the target and the analogy, and I feel like probably letting him go was for the best. Yoshigyu is good. I do associate Yoshigyu with something that, for example, construction workers eat. I mean, it's definitely something I'd have after surfing or something like that. It's good food for when you're like really hungry. You sit at a counter, it's cheap, it's there's a lot of salarymen, a lot of construction workers, good food. I don't really consider it something that a lot of women eat. I don't know where he was going after rural girls. I heard about the hooked on that like meth kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, points for enthusiasm, but in the end, a little bit in the wrong direction. Kerberos Tenshi, many countries led by women got quite the praise for handling the pandemic. Then it all fell apart. Well, I did feel like the praise was premature, and it was a self-seeking. It's the tricky part. In order to prove that women are just as good as men, some people sort of reach a little bit too hard for examples, and that can backfire when you invest and say, see. I don't subscribe to the idea that women are any better or worse than men, at least by potential. I don't subscribe to the idea that there's things that inherently, some people turn it around and they say, saying that either gender is inherently better at leadership than the other because of traits inherent to men or women seems a bit forced, although I heard a lot of that when I was in New Zealand. New Zealand is a very strong feminism tradition. What I do think is messed up is when there is not equal opportunity or equal representation. There should be just the fact that women leaders are still unusual, and to the extent you want to promote equality by promoting good examples, that's a good idea. But you're setting yourself up for a fall when you're praising some kind of supremacist view that not only are they just as good, but they're in fact better and flawless. And look at them, and nobody's had no country has had a perfect track record on this. Taiwan has had a great track record, but so has Vietnam, so has Korea, so has Japan. Even Australia did pretty well by global standards, and they had very, very different types of government, very, very different types of leaders, and I don't think that the gender of any leader had any real impact, including with Ardern. I mean, I think that she's actually a very good, competent leader and a good politician. Even though I wouldn't have voted for her, I think she's actually an above average politician. I think she's very well qualified to be the youngest prime minister I think New Zealand's ever had. But I think people got a little bit carried away with the praise and not realizing how that might backfire, which was a mistake. So yeah, I agree with that. I still like skia, and the fact that when you order a big bowl of skiaki, your bill says daisuki. I didn't know that. Again, I'm not into skia. I do like tenka ipping, and they've got, if you do the unhealthy thing of drinking the gravy soup that is in, which you shouldn't do, but I do, it says come again tomorrow. But probably for not longer than 15 years, based on your life expectancy if you eat that stuff. Kerberos Tenshi, I think Tonga had the best track record with only one case of COVID. Yeah, although Tonga is such a small size as well, you're probably forcing it. And I think even now, right now, the islands are all starting to get COVID. So yeah, none of these things I think are worth holding up. Now to the story you've all been waiting for. Sayonara trash cans, Tokyo to move last receptacles next month. One thing a lot of people notice when they come to Japan and when they come to Tokyo is that it's really hard to find a rubbish bin. And because the streets are very, very clean, it means that people who are looking for a rubbish bin get very frustrated because there's no rubbish bin where you can throw it away, and it kind of is hard. Obviously, when everything is like when there's no litter anywhere, that in itself becomes a virtuous cycle. People are discouraged from littering. And so this is a thing. This actually, the origins of this get a little bit confused. They are removing the remaining trash cans from some subway stations because they say it's for anti-terrorism reasons. Which, if you go back, I believe it's something like 18 years or something that this happened. It was in the early 2000s. There was a sort of crazy cherry bomb. There's like a little mini explosive maker guy who decided he wanted to be like live a life like in a movie. So he put a couple of these bombs into train station lockers and into rubbish bins at train stations and set a few of them off. No one was hurt, no one was killed or injured, but of course it set off a manhunt, and they eventually found the guy who was a crazy person. But while they were doing this, and I remember it was around the end of the year, in fact I think it was 1999 or 2000, the government, the police in Tokyo just basically closed all the lockers, made them unavailable, and covered and sealed all of the rubbish bins and all of the train stations in Tokyo. And they did this in a lot of public train stations, public rubbish bins as well. And a funny thing happened when they did that. When they covered up the rubbish bins and made them unavailable, it was inconvenient, but the result was that people, of course, didn't have places to throw their rubbish, so they ended up carrying it more and taking it home. And then they discovered the biggest places where litter was worst, like in places like Shibuya, was when rubbish bins would get full so quickly. People would start to throw their rubbish, leave it beside the rubbish bin, or throw it around near the rubbish bin. And so you get this sort of massive area around rubbish bins, which was also often covered with rubbish. And it was discovered that even when the terrorism threat was kind of over, that people would be more inclined to not litter and to keep rubbish and take it home and dispose of it if the rubbish bins were not available. There would be more counterintuitive, but people would take there being a rubbish bin as a cue that it's okay to litter near the rubbish bin, and people would do that. So it became like a psychological, like a social experiment, where it turned out that yes, indeed, not only did not having rubbish bins save the cost of collection and having people look after them, but it also resulted in less litter. And of course, it meant that you couldn't have these crazy bombers. You had a security risk eliminated. So Tokyo decided, when they realized this, that they were going to systematically start removing rubbish bins just to see if it had the predicted impact, and it did. So annoyingly, again, the inconvenience of not having rubbish bins around outside is annoying. But yeah, they discovered they could save money on not having to collect. They could justify it as a security measure, save cost, and it had the side effect that there was less litter. And so they reduced a whole bunch of rubbish bins, and now it's hard to find any. There are a few subway lines that do keep rubbish bins, and there are a few left at the moment, but it looks like, they've systematically been reducing and switching these. So basically there is, not very many left at all, and it looks like the very few that still have them are planning to remove them. That's right, they took them away from Tokyo metro stations in January. I didn't even realize that, actually, because I guess I haven't been using the subway station, but even the remaining ones are disappearing. So it's one of these things. It might be an interesting thing to try. I guess if you tried this even in a place like New Zealand, you probably would find that people would just litter. But to me personally, who is not comfortable littering, but might be tempted to put a piece of rubbish beside a rubbish bin if it was overflowing, it works for me, and it becomes this thing that you're expected when you go out. If you're going to go out to an event, you take a couple of plastic bags in your bag so that you can collect your rubbish and carry it home with you. It's also something that the convenience stores used to have rubbish bins outside of the convenience stores, which again I used to like to use. If I was coming home with something, if I had something to eat on the way home or something like that, and I had the rubbish and I couldn't find a rubbish bin, you could throw it in the rubbish bins by the convenience stores. But again, they found that it was easier to just get rid of those, and it seemed to work both in terms of litter and reducing effort to keep it. It's probably a good thing, but kind of annoying anyway. So that is what happened. Quint Ranked, a lot of people think it was because of the subway gas attack, but it wasn't that. It was actually, it was after I came to Japan in 2000 that they took a lot of these away. They didn't use rubbish bins for the trash cans for the sarin attack. They actually had clear plastic bags of sarin gas, which they threw on the floors of the trains and poked with umbrellas. So it wasn't that. It was a kind of a lower level quasi-terrorism. It was just basically a nutter. It was like a Unabomber, only, not as fatal or scary or whatever. But yeah, it was a case like that. Kerberos Tenshi, because they have people for that, littering their garbage cans makes a lot of people think there will be someone to pick it up. That is absolutely what I think it is. And by the way, speaking as someone who's spent a couple of summers in Australia working around food courts, picking up rubbish and cleaning tables, yeah, people do think if they see that there's someone to clean it up, it does make some people, not all people. There are a few people who are always nice and actually go out of their way to clean up after themselves, but there are a lot of people who think, oh, there's someone who will clean up after me. I can make an extra mess and it's okay. I can leave an ice cream on top of a table. Someone there is going to clean it up. I mean, it's bloody horrible, but yeah, people do definitely think like that. Iraq 299, great to see you. Evening indeed. Yep, those bins they put next to the vending machines seem to be eternally overflowing. Yes, indeed. To me, I'm more disappointed with humanity than the people taking away the rubbish bins. If people really did just use them appropriately and did not litter, and they with them there, then we would probably still have them. But this is just proof of the way it works. That just and it's the right end result anyway, that people should be mindful of what they're throwing away and what they're using and taking their rubbish home and taking responsibility for disposing it. So it makes sense. Lucy, as an Australian, we are messy and it's rudeness I cannot understand. Well, as a half Australian who's worked in Australia, in Brisbane at South Bank Parklands, cleaning up the food court area. And by the way, it's the same in New Zealand. It's the same actually in most parts of the world, but certainly I think there is an added level of that someone's going to clean it up attitude that not everyone, but a lot of people have, and you definitely see it in New Zealand and Australia. Lucy, good to have you in the chat, by the way. Kerberos Tenshi, as aviation security for Delta. Oh, really? You work as aviation security for Delta? I saw what people did inside the airplane on a flight from Atlanta to Germany. Disgraceful and disgusting. Ugh. Well, plus, with the American airline, I do enjoy watching Travel Trek or something like that. I've gotten into a thing watching channels of people who review like first class and business class like flights, just comparing the offerings. And seeing the bad reviews of and Delta doesn't have a bad reputation actually among American airlines, but going on a bad airline where they clearly don't clean up as well, and how dirty some of those things get, like down the side of the chairs and stuff like that. Even in like the business or first class where people are paying like $10,000 for an air ticket and they have to basically sit in garbage where they don't feel where the table's still sticky and stuff. And again, even on a plane, I don't understand that, right? I don't understand not picking up your own rubbish or wiping your own table. But yeah, a lot of people are like that. So yeah. EDIR, by the way, good to have you in here. Trash Can Terrorist does sound like a good name for an indie punk band. If you're from the UK though, the IRA did put a lot of very destructive bombs into trash cans in the 1980s. So it's a little bit close to the bone probably over there, but Trash Can Terrorist, why not? Wow, I'm going right on pace at the moment. A few more stories. Carlos Gon says that he wants a trial. Well, that's interesting. Of course, apparently he's saying that this is due to the red notice that prevents him traveling, and that France now other countries are piling on now warrants for him, including France, for financial misappropriation. And, he's a billionaire. He still wants to work. And he, the idea that he is, he always argued that, Japan was sort of false racist, sort of trumped up charges, and it's a huge injustice. But, they found stuff to charge him with in other countries as well. And now he's saying that, no, he wants a trial, but he wants a trial in Lebanon. And I would say, if you want a trial, well, one, you were going to get a trial. Now, yes, problems with the Japanese justice system accepted. That doesn't mean, not everybody, in fact, nobody in Japan can afford to pay the freaking American A-team to smuggle you, out of the country when you're under a pretty cushy home detention. He lobbied for that home detention. He didn't like being in prison, and so they relented. They put him on home detention. So what does he do? He pays the A-team to smuggle him on an airplane to Turkey, where he illegally transited through Turkey, being smuggled onto Lebanon, where he lives in a Nissan house. That probably he shouldn't have had in the first place. So the idea that he's innocent, I mean, okay, even if he's innocent of the reporting income, accounting irregularities, and that in itself, I mean, Greg Kelly, his co-defendant, was convicted, so at least of one of the counts. So even though it appears he still might have a case to answer in Japan on that basic charge, I mean, he's clearly, and when he says he wants a trial, I'm pretty sure he doesn't want a trial for like escaping custody and paying mercenaries and illegally transiting Turkey. I'm pretty sure he just wants a trial on the certain charges that he wants the trial on. And he says that, but yeah. So I have no sympathy for Gon. I've said this on Twitter. I know a lot of people have sympathy for Gon. They feel like he's a symbol of injustice, but no, that is not Nelson Mandela. That is a billionaire who had an Omani offshore money laundering thing with a boat in his wife's name that was, I don't know, what was it called? It was, I mean, basically, he was taking the piss with and doing a lot of dodgy stuff. And that seems pretty clear to me. And I think he, at the very least, did have a case to answer. I agree that the way that the Japanese justice system detained him for so long, the fact it seemed clearly that the police were cooperating with Nissan for a political, intercompany corporate political prosecution, all of that is valid, but he was going to go on trial, and he does still have a case to answer. So you don't get to go to Lebanon and say, he's going to be in prison in Lebanon and he's not going to be able to work on a board the rest of his life, and hell, he's already got enough money that he's going to be able to live comfortably where he is. But yeah, he's not going to be able to do the things he wants to do unless he comes back to Japan and finishes out his trial. And certainly if he goes to any Interpol country, including France, apart from the fact he's going to be tried in France, so France also has the right, once they're done with him, to extradite him. And given that the charges that he's being charged with in France to some extent overlap with the charges in Japan. Like I say, he's got to decide, does he want to hide in a cave? I mean, it's not a cave, it's a very, very nice house that he lives in Lebanon, but does he want to do that? You can't sit there saying that I want a trial on my own terms. Who gets to do that? And I know people who have been acquitted on criminal trials in Japan. Or at least I know of people who have. It's rare, but it can happen. So I don't have support for him. So yes, that is Astro Boy. Yes, they got him as a mascot for the Japanese rugby team. So he's like a Japanese rugby symbol. But yes, indeed. Aaron, is Aaron here? Oh, Aaron, glad that you made it. Great. Everybody was worried. Everyone was saying, where's Aaron? So great to see you there. And Lucy, indeed, he wants a trial on his terms. Don't we all, right? I'd love a trial on my terms. I mean, no, I don't want a trial, but if I had a trial, if there was something that I had to have a trial for, I'd want it to be on my own terms, right? But no, life isn't, when you break the law, you have to, unfortunately, you don't get to dictate the terms of your trial, even if you're used to dictating the terms of everything in your life other than that. Eric Bailey says, Carlos Ghosn is your hero, and you're entitled to do that, but still. Ian Macaulay in Lebanon for the trial. Yeah. I mean, again, and Lebanon's not going to do anything with him. So great to have Aaron with us, of course. Also, Tim the Asian Inc., you were late. Boom, 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 boom. No problem at all. I don't agree with any punishment before trial. Same. Although at the same time, they can't. I mean, so they detain people when they think that there's a risk that they might run away, which has gone for the next people in his position in Japan. Yeah, they're not going to give him home arrest because of what Ghosn did. And Ghosn, he was complaining that if you detain me, you shouldn't be punishing me before I go on trial. So they put him on home arrest, and he took advantage of that, and he skipped the country. So he, again, it's the old bad gaijin. He's made it impossible for anyone who comes after him. So no, a-hole. That guy is an a-hole, if you ask me. I don't have sympathy for him, but yes. Anyway, two more stories. Really interesting. So in Japan, the coverage of Ukraine is still pretty consistently the number one story almost every night. I mean, unless there's something exceptional. Day to day, blow by blow, what's happening in the war over there is getting top attention, including the horrific stuff that's happening in a lot of parts. The coverage is unquestionably very pro-Ukraine. Certainly, I can't think of anything you see from the Russian side. I'm aware of the Russian side of things. That the Azov battalion in Mariupol was basically intimidating Russian speakers into from part of Greater Donbass, that is part of Donetsk, and that they were sort of holding, they were basically a bunch of neo-Nazis and right-wing thugs who got a government-backed badging, and they used SS emblems as their insignia, and they were intimidating the city into basically not going over with the other separatists and so on. And they were fighting directly against the separatists and Russian forces, which were backing them. The Russians said, look, the Ukrainians are endorsing neo-Nazis to hold Donetsk, and that's why we have to go and liberate them from Nazis. And, the Azov battalion are a bunch of scumbags. That certainly is how they appear, although that said. When you're dealing as you are now with a foreign invasion, I mean, you don't hesitate to let people who want to fight, who can fight. But even for all for all the stuff that Russia says, yes, Ukraine has neo-Nazis, so does Russia, so does every country, so does New Zealand. Are you going to invade New Zealand to go get the white supremacist gangs? And I don't feel sorry for them, but you look at everything, the way that Russia's carrying out the war there, it's crazy. And that is pretty much what the Japanese media is on. They do occasionally mention the Russian justifications, but they're not justifications. I mean, seriously, it's just all BS propaganda. The fact that Putin was giving history lectures saying that Ukraine isn't even a proper country and shouldn't exist. That's like how Hussein talked about Kuwait before the invasion. And it was setting up with the same expectation. Remember, they expected that the president would run away, and that they had their dress uniforms in the tanks that got caught in the suburbs of Kiev and exploded. They were expecting to be in a parade within 2 or 3 days. And it didn't work out that way. And so, no, the Russians are absolutely, if there's any recreation of World War II happening, it's the Russia's playing the role of the bad guys. Clearly in this. So with all of that sympathy, it's interesting. The government's hard line on Russia is drawing a lot of public support. Of course, Japan's been dealing with Russia on a low level negatively for a long time, and has really kept Russia at arm's length when other countries were more willing to invest. I've talked about that a lot. But what's really interesting to me is that with all of this, and with all the images of suffering civilians leading the news prolonged every night, is now we have polls showing that 69% of Japanese think that Japan should accept more refugees from Ukraine, which is wonderful. Big problem that I've talked about last week, that there are a ton of other refugees already here from the other 59 conflicts in the world who have been basically struggling to get any recognition or acceptance into Japan for a long time, both public resistance, government policy resistance, and just ridiculous. The rate of acceptance is so low, like a couple of dozen people per year. I do hope that, and I guess the difference here is that media coverage just doesn't cover the war in Yemen. It doesn't cover the conflicts in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It doesn't cover the other circumstances that lead to other refugees coming here, like Ukraine. But when people are confronted with it the way that they are, they think, yeah, of course we have to look after these people. It's just that they're kind of blind, and maybe partially willfully blind. But my hope is that this campaign can be expanded into a general recognition of the need to take care of refugees. I mean, it's just such a simple, obvious thing. It shouldn't even be political or controversial that, if a refugee needs help, you give them help. How is it that there can be a collective morality that if there's no rubbish bin, don't litter? But there's no collective morality that, if somebody is running from their lives from a genocidal, destructive war of aggression from a country like Russia, that you don't help people. I mean, again, this seems to be turning opinion on that, all the coverage of it. And my hope is that it doesn't just become something that benefits Caucasian refugees or European refugees, but also people from the Middle East and people from Africa, as it should be in every country. And this is a good reminder. People thinking that, oh, it's a backdoor to get around immigration. It's not immigration. Refugees are a completely separate system to normal immigration. So it's a positive thing anyway that's causing some attention there. And the final story, horrible story, that came out yesterday. Right beside actually the Russian-occupied island, there's a little peninsula called the Shiryutoko Peninsula in Hokkaido, which sticks out towards where the 4 Russian-occupied islands are. And there's the start of on the Sea of Okhotsk. It's frozen over for most of the winter, so it's just becoming unfrozen. And there's this peninsula which has this spectacular rugged coastline with waterfalls that go into the ocean and rocks and so on. And there were these tourist boats, these ferries that do take tourist rides out there through the summer. And apparently with Golden Week coming up, the tourist operations there were considering putting out with their first tours of the year. Apparently the boat in question, the ferry here that sank, it seems, the seas were rough, and this was the first run of the year. So, apparently the other ferry operators decided against going out, and they told the operator of this ferry that, they shouldn't go out, and they said, yeah, got it. And they went out anyway on a boat with 21 people on it. The boat radioed at about 1 p.m. that they were taking on water, that they're at a certain point near a waterfall that goes into the ocean, and they were in rough seas and they were taking on water. They radioed an hour later that the boat was listing 30 degrees, and then no contact was made with them. So it seems like the boat sank. The water temperature up there, by the way, this is just coming out of like ice has just gone back across these areas. The water temperature is about 3 degrees. Generally, it's not considered that people could last in the sea there for more than like an hour. And they couldn't find any sign of the boat or people for more than a day. They couldn't start finding people to today. They found 10 people today. The way that they phrase it in Japan, there is a stigma against saying that someone is actually dead, saying that they found bodies, for example, describing that they recovered bodies. They don't say that in Japan until, you don't want to declare someone dead until they're really, really dead, until it's confirmed by a doctor. So the result of this is that there's a convention in the media that when you find somebody who's clearly dead, rather than saying that they're dead, they'll say that they found 4 people who were in a state of cardiac arrest. Their hearts were not beating. But they won't call them dead until they're declared dead. So, as they found people today, apart from the fact that everyone is still horrified that this happened, and there's people looking at this and how did it occur in terms of the ferry being able to go out when the seas were too rough. Some people saying at first was this the Russians, because it's right across from where the Russian-occupied islands are, where they've been sort of saber-rattling. But no, the fact that they radioed and showed that this was an accident. But even Japanese commenters talking about how, the media phrasing was that they rescued 4 people that had cardiac arrest. And, they didn't recover. It's people saying they're not rescuing, they're recovering. Why are they pretending that they're not dead when they are? Like, it's just confusing. Media should be more straight. And that sort of is true, but at the same time, there's a real thing in Japan about not wanting to call people dead unless it's absolutely confirmed. So that's why. Very, very sad. I guess a warning about these kind of things as well. That these sort of accidents can happen. It looks pretty hopeless. There were 2 children, a lot of people on this. It looks like there's no sign of any survivors out of the 21 people. There's still hope that maybe some of them might have gotten ashore, perhaps, but they haven't been able to find anyone, and they know where the spot is. So very, very sad, and really interesting part of Japan as well. I mean, a place that I hope the tourism up there doesn't suffer. It's from a town called Utoro, which is written in katakana because it's an Ainu name. There are parts in Japan which are recognized as having non-Japanese culture, like being named that way. And a beautiful coastline, and an interesting part of Japan. It's just a shame that the first tourist run ended up like this. So anyway, that's the big news at the moment, which has taken Ukraine off the headlines. But that is all the stories that we have this week. So finally, last run on the comments. Boom, Sainted Sir, good to see you. Indeed, being late seems to be very trendy. You are being very trendy. Welcome to the show, Sainted Sir. Good to have you, as always. Tokyo 503, now over 650 Ukrainian evacuees in Japan. Surprised the number was that high. But at the same time, I mean, this shows what a bit of awareness will actually do on morality issues, so it's a good thing. Aaron, side note, after stories are done, you have a water leak in your house. Oh no, Aaron. And have I ever had a nightmare home situation? Squirrel a day every day. You know what? Not really. I've lived in a lot of homes as well now that I think about it. What's the worst home situation I've ever been in? I have not had a water leak like that. I had some, I guess, in Australia. That you do have flash floods and stuff quite often in Australia. You get extreme weather in Queensland. I think the downstairs of the house has flooded a couple of times, although not when I was there. No, I've had a good run. I mean, we've had earthquakes, we've had power blackouts and all that sort of thing, but nothing like a water leak. That sucks. I'm sorry to hear that. Tim the Asian Ink, well, people got mad when they were asked to wear a mask. So, yeah, I can't. It's probably too late for me to realize what that's reacting to. But the thing with the Americans like celebrating taking their masks off on an airplane in the mid-flight, yeah, that makes me not want to go to America. I don't want to be on an airplane full of people not wearing masks very soon, but yeah. Cobra Stenchi, like when someone dies on an airplane, youch, death is pronounced after they are brought out of the plane. Well, I guess that is a thing that happens, and I'm sorry to hear that, yes. Alas, they are now officially dead. I heard that this evening, yes indeed. Dan H, finally, when will we get some new music that I have made? I have not been making music, have I? My time just sort of fills up with one thing or another, and I should make some more music. I still pay for the professional SoundCloud account, so I've still got all the storage, so I should be using it, so I guess I should do that. But I should make some. That's a good point. I'm really out of practice, so I should get back into it. I wish there was an easier setup where I could like share my screen and make music and share the audio at the same time. I wish there was an easy way to do that. I'm sure that there is, but I haven't been able to figure that out. But I'll get back into it. Certainly using the iPad is a good solution. Maybe if I get a new iPad, which I hope to do when I get a new iPhone later this year, maybe that's something that I'll do. I should do that. Anyway, that is all the topics. We're as usual 10 minutes over, but wow, somehow I filled up time with very few topics. I will just dump this whole thing onto the audio thing, and I'll upload a couple of episodes, Tokyo 503, so I will do that. Aaron, I'm really sorry to hear about the house. I hope you are able to manage all of that and you get that sorted out. PB asks, are the shoes still doing all right? Yeah, they're doing great. I don't know actually if the inner sole on them gets thinner or anything, or if the spring or the advantage of the fast shoes is lessened over time, but I can tell you my times I comfortably am running faster than I was running in the New Balances, which I love, but I run faster in these shoes. I think it's that I'm getting used to it. One thing I really noticed when the Nike Vaporfly shoes that I wear were new was that they noticeably made you rock forward on your toes. They keep you on your toes, like just from the shape. Kind of forces you to do that. I don't notice that anymore, and I wonder if that's just that I've become accustomed to the shoe, or if it's that the shoe's kind of flattening out. I'm getting, me wearing the shoe out. But they're good. I love them. They're definitely not as cushioning or comfy as the New Balances are. So actually, when I'm unfit and I'm just getting back into jogging, I wear the New Balances just because I'm not trying to go fast, and they are just nice shoes. But yeah, the shoes are good. Thank you for asking. Quentin Rankid, thank you. And thank everybody as always. Have a great week indeed, everybody. I'm going to say goodbye. Do take care. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter. Remember to like if you like. I do appreciate that. That is all that I do this for. Like some peanuts. Have a good week, everybody. Boom. Peace. Any stream. Boom. One more time. Boom.